Hello, well today I'm going to be making a basket and I'm going to be using some tree bark, and here it is. Now I've already popped a film up on harvesting the tree bark. I'll pop a link down below and show you how we did that. So today I'm going to be making a little basket. There is also another film I popped up recently which was making baskets with the bodgers. So I learnt a few things there. I'm going to be putting them into practice in this film and I'll tell you about it as we go along. So this will be a step by step to making your own bark basket. So I'm just unrolling this bit of bark, and what I want are some strips 2 foot long and about 3/4 of an inch wide. So what I'm going to do is trim this and then cut it with my strap cutter. I'll cut it a bit oversized to start with in terms of length, because it's easier obviously to then trim it to size afterwards. This bark is slightly damp, so it's manipulating quite happily. I will put it into some hot water soon. I need to start off with a straight edge. So I've got a straight edge here and I'm going to score a line down so I've got a nice straight edge for my strap cutter. This is a leather worker's strap cutter that I use for cutting out leather belts. If you don't have one of these, don't worry. All you need to do is mark your bark with a little nick and then you can use your straight edge and you can cut more strips. But as I have one of these, it does make it a bit easier. So it's just like when I cut leather, feed it in and then pull it through, and it will give me little strips of bark which are the right width, or more or less the right width. The bark does actually handle in a similar way to leather. So there you are, I have my first little strip of tree bark. So I'll carry on, I'll cut a few more strips. I'm going to do this one, I think I'll make it 6 by 6 strips, so 12 strips in total. You do need an even number of strips for this to work, and I'm sure I'll get 1 or 2 rejects along the way. The little cutter, it has like a measuring scale here, so you can set your width by adjusting this screw at the end, and you can slide the bar that has the blade in it there to get a wider or a narrower piece. So it's quite a useful little thing. But as I say, don't be put off if you don't have one of these tools, because you can very happily just cut with a knife and a ruler and get your strips that way, so it really doesn't matter. Don't be put off. It's great fun. Well, I've cut my strips, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to soak them in some hot water, and that will hopefully make them a bit more supple and less likely to break. I have tried where possible with the bark to go for the thinner bits of bark. Some of this tree, it's had quite a lot of like rough knotty bits, and I've tried to sort of discard those where possible because they've got splits and they're quite sort of bulky as well, and that obviously won't be quite so easy to bend and flex. So where possible, I've tried to go for smoother material. It's a bit bumpy in places, but that's life. So I'm just cutting these strips to length, and I'm trying to pick off the better bits of the strip when I cut them. So I'm cutting them all to 2 foot long. So they're 3/4 of an inch wide and 2 foot long. So I've had them soaking for about half an hour at the moment. They were already quite damp. I'll pop them back in some hot water and keep them nicely soaked, and then I'll start working on them. I'm trying to, as I do this, keep an eye on where I am with the unders and overs. Going out, I've got 6 pieces I need to do each way because you've got to be an even number. So I'm continuing to feed these over under, and again just looking at one piece here, for example, this strip going across, so it goes under, over, under, over, under, like that. And I'm slowly, as you can see in the middle here, forming like a sort of crossover patchwork. So I've got one more strip, so I'm having 6 strips each way. I've got 5 at the moment. You do need an even number of strips each way, so I need to put 1 in each way, and then I will be ready for the next step. I need to try and get this packed in also as close as I can, so that the squares are proper squares and not some of these like rectangles that I've got at the moment. So in a minute try and manipulate that in a bit more as well. So just weaving in the last couple of strips. So that's what I've got at the moment. I need to try and get these closer together so it's all a bit more compact, and then I'm going to tie a bit of string round to hold it all in. So I've been trying to push these in as best as I can. I now have a length of string which I'm just going to wrap around to hold everything together and try and stop it drifting apart. So what I have now is this square of string going round that's holding all of this in. It's quite difficult because they're obviously all trying to burst out, and I'm trying to keep everything closed in nice and tight. Now I want to try and get this nice colour of the inner bark on the outside, so I'm actually going to turn this over, which may prove to be a great mistake as the curve is going the other way. But I will take that risk and see what happens. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start at a centre point. So this is why I said you need an even number. So I've got 6 each way. I'm going to start at a centre point here, and I'm going to literally turn them over. They are bending, so I can manage that just about. And literally going to bring that whole side up, and this will become a new corner. So I'm away from my, if you like, corners with a string circle. I'm actually in the middle, and I'll be doing the same this side, bending it over and forming a new corner this side, and ditto with the others. So this is where it does get a bit odd. Everything changes round in its direction. So what I've started to do now is in the middle, so away from my string corners, in the middle, I've started to fold over the strips of bark. And that's my first fold on each one. I'll carry on, so I carry on folding them over, but again alternating, so that at every point you've got a square of bark showing. You mustn't have an oblong showing. So here I've got a new corner forming. I've just been building this wall by literally, it's just going over and under each time. What you need to make sure is that where you've got a piece coming from what was the base, that it is going over and under. You've got to check each time that you've got a square. You don't want, if you've made a mistake, one of these could look like an oblong because you've not got the over and under correctly. But that's the thing to really watch with these, is that you get the over and the under all working out correct. So I've gone around and I've just done like a matrix of 3 on each part. And what I now need to do is manipulate this base. So those are the old corners with the string, and these are the new ones. So I need to do a little sort of like bending on my base to establish those corners. So I'm just bending this base so that I get the new square forming. And it takes a bit of manipulation, a bit of bending for it to fall into shape, but it's coming. This is where I think it does seem a bit sort of like, what am I doing? How's this going? But once you can get this base shape forming, you begin to see it as a box again. So I'm continuing to work my way around, and just like I was trying to sort of form the new corners, as you go up you want to try and form the new corners in the walls. So again, a little bit of like manipulation. You could probably almost do this on a wooden block and it might not be such a bad idea. So I'm sort of getting there now. So what I'll do, I'll try and manipulate this into shape a bit more, and then I will trim the top round to level it up, and then I'll probably sew a bit of bark around the top. I've got some fairly heavy duty scissors here, so I'm going to start sort of trimming a line around the top, and that will help me work out where I am. Well, I've just been literally pulling and trying to stretch and manipulate my thumb to get the sort of joins closer together and to get everything matching up. So to level up the top of this, what I'm just doing is I'm bending over every other one. Like that, and just going around the top of it. I've just been bending over every other one, and I've put a clip on it just to hold it there. So these all go around. I then just measured from the tip to the base to make sure that they were all the same size, and I mean it's coming out at 5.5 inches high, as I didn't want to realise I'd suddenly made a mistake and had something rather lopsided. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to trim these higher bits, which are single layer, so all the single layer ones, off to be level with the top two peaks of its neighbours, and then I'm going to put a band around it, level like that. What I can now do is I can cut the tabs off, so what I end up with is a single layer of bark going around the whole of the top lip. So one more here, for example, I'll just cut in alignment with that. So I'm just cutting here in alignment with that piece next to it, and what I'm getting is this consistent sort of rim of a single thickness of bark. I'll just pin that back actually, I don't want it all moving everywhere. I can go around and I'm just basically removing the inner double layer. So that's the top all trimmed round. What I'm going to do now is get a couple of strips, an inside strip and an outside strip, and I'll be able to wrap those round and then sew them all together. So that's my outside strip, literally just pegged in position, and I've given it a bit of overlap here, just so I can stitch the two together. When I come to put the interior strip in on the inside, same idea, I'll have the same sort of overlap, but I'll do it on the other side, then I'm not having to stitch through lots and lots of layers of the bark. So I've now got my inner and outer strips just pegged in position. I can actually take this string off now, which I put round earlier. So I'm now just going around drilling a little series of holes with my little drill. So I'm just sewing around the top edge now using 2 needle saddle stitch, and I'll put 2 rows of stitching in. So I've just put in my second line of saddle stitch around the top, so that will hold everything nice and securely. I now need to let this dry out, and it will go a lovely light golden colour. It's chestnut, so it will be very nice, very attractive when it dries out. Well, there you have it. One nice basket made out of bark. Very pleased with the way it's turned out, particularly after my struggles in making one of these in leather. So good to know it's worked, and I hope you enjoyed watching this one, and see you in the next film. Bye bye.